Go where your best prayers take you, unclench the fists of your spirit and take it easy. Breathe deeply of the glad air and live one day at a time. Know that you're precious and learn to trust. Amen. Well, good morning to all of you. It's great to see you. We had a good group early and a big crowd out at Lakeshore this morning already, so it's great to see you on this Labor Day weekend, and welcome. And we really do welcome everybody joining us by way of Channel 12 and YouTube this morning. Welcome in worship again. Well, it's that time of year. Football, my gracious, how many football games were on at one time yesterday, and school started, and we have a little rain. Hopefully we'll get a change in weather. We'll get on into the fall, so it's kind of a shift time these next few weeks. I don't know about you, I appreciate more and more Labor Day, and really want you to slow down for a minute and think a few deeper thoughts with me about Labor Day. Now, I promise I'll be short, but have us think a little bit about it. I want to talk about, I was going to tell them an experience I had about calling Social Security this last week. I don't know about you, but if you've called any kind of helpline these days, it's kind of difficult. And I'm usually kind of pin up before the person even comes on the line. Because one, I'm going to be disappointed. I'm not going to get my question answered. I'm going to be on there a long time, and then I'm going to be left with the same problem. That's in my mind. And the person's not going to be helpful. That's in my mind. I own it. So I called, and of course I had to go through, if you haven't called, and you probably haven't, most of you don't need to do that, I'm doing that for a particular reason right now, but you're kind of going through a little thing, and we'll do this, yeah, no, I don't need that, no, I don't need that. There was a whole list of those things, so I got through that. And then it said, well, is there any other question? If not, hang up. And I'm thinking, well, okay. But I held on for about 10 seconds, and I'm glad I did it because, oh, by the way, if you'll leave your number, we'll call you back. So I thought, all righty now, here we go. In 1 hour, left my number. I want you to know, on the mark, 1 hour, the woman called me back from Social Security. Nice, polite, helpful, great mood, made me in a good mood, answered my questions specifically. I was online for just a few minutes, and I thought, holy smokes. And you could tell she just loved her job. She was great at her job. And I said, thank you, and we hung up. And I felt like an earthworm because I was all built up for this kind of a standard way I approach all of that mechanistic stuff that we do these days. And yet, if I own it, I kind of thought about it more deeply through the week. And I'd been thinking about Labor Day and about work. And I started thinking about my own attitudes. And I realized, do you know what part is going on? See, I think when I'm working at my day job, which is to work for you guys, I'm always wonderful. I'm always positive. I always do what you need. I do it immediately and well, and I'm great at it. And you love me. You get it? And then when I call these people, they're not any of that. See, I'm projecting something, and I started thinking, John, that's just not true. Really? What about you? Really? What about work, your job? Some of you are retired many years, but what about those days of your work and your job? You know, I wonder if we just don't project through our own views of either how we think we are or what we expect is how we look at work in our culture today. And it is a very deep, manifold kind of conversation. And I'm going to ask you to slow down and talk for a few minutes and think about labor, about work. It's important. It's incredibly important. You know, I have a really good friend who's a member of this congregation, and she really is really important to me in so many ways, but for one reason, she's been this model of something. And I'm going to tell you what the model is. She was a nurse for, 40-something years. She worked a hard job. She worked a demanding job in the hospital, working with people principally who had GI issues. And those are difficult. I had one recently. I can tell you they're not fun. And she worked with those patients who were often in pain, coming out of surgery, facing more surgery, facing colostomies. Her work, and I want to be discreet about this since I don't know private information, but let's be honest, it is demanding work and it's unpleasant work. It's just the truth. And yet, you know what? She saw her job as a calling. She's called to do the work. It touched me the first time she said it. It was her identity. I am a nurse. And she's proud of what she did, of having a career, and I would say even more deeply, a mission to serve people. And it just, I can't forget it when she put it in my mind. I thought, good gracious. And I would even say she had a noble sense about it, of an endeavor, of really worth doing. And I promise you, the job was not easy at times. In fact, it was almost probably impossible at times, particularly when she was helping people face pain or to face their own need to self-care. They were going to have to do their own self-care after they left the hospital. Impossible stuff, and she did it sublimely. I bet you know people on the other end of the spectrum who hate their jobs. Job is a drudgery. It's a pain, don't like it. It's a grindstone. It's a necessary evil, have to get through it. Just getting through it. I almost take it personally that work is an impediment in some way, that work time is not fulfilling. Now, what I've done intentionally is to give you two real models of how we present work. My guess is those are the extremes. I kind of hope there are more people who enjoy their work and find it self-possessing almost in some larger way. But the truth is most of us flow in between. So this is reflective. I hope you'll think about your own experience of work. How do you see your job, see your work, whatever that is? I'm not trying to put anybody down. That's not my point. All jobs are not equal, conditions aren't equal, pay's not good. There's so much that we could begin to talk about in the reality of what work is in America, and we need to talk about, particularly for the future, you know. And yet sometimes for all of us, work is almost ethereal. I don't care how hard it is. And you experience that. I generally experience it when I'm with a team effort. We have a great team around here of 16, 17, 18 people. We pull something off and it's just ethereal. It's just like you're so full of energy just because you were part of something so good. And there are days it's just a grind. It really is. And I'm not self-deceived. There are days I don't perform well. I don't think well about my job. My guess is I'm not too different than most people. We're on that continuum somewhere. You know, there really is a lot of research about this. And not fake research. So, you know, we talk about statistics, but there are really good studies. And I'm a person who believes in that. Medical studies, science studies, social studies, we need to do these things. Really reflect, what are we really seeing? What is really relevant? What is really true? It's interesting that these studies, and there are tons of them, all reflect the same thing. And it's kind of surprising. You know, the people who've accumulated the most wealth, maybe until recently, but over time, the most wealth in our country, meaning they bought their houses, had money for retirement, educated their children, had economic stability through good times and bad, those people are the mainstay. They're the middle America. They're the middle America of our culture. And they are the people who did not have glamorous jobs for the most part. They had jobs. Some were hard, like the one I just described. Very difficult, very demanding. And yet, they were the people who liked their jobs. In other words, these people have a high investment in work and a high energy about it and purpose in it. You catch that? And at the same time, they have a balance about other things that have helped them see work as a real important platform in life. Because the truth of it, it is an important platform. It may be the most important platform that we talk about in society. Is what do you do begins to be who you are. Is that not true? I guarantee you it is. We also see the negative aspect of that, which we need to do a whole lot of conversation in this culture about. But you know, the studies reflect that folks in that place who have anchored kind of the central part of the driving workforce in America have some things on their side. One is they do put a high investment in their work. They want to do a good job. They are proud of the work they do, whatever that work is. It doesn't matter. And they don't have the glamorous jobs, and they're not the richest, best paid people. You catch that? Has nothing to do with that. Has to do with what's inside. But they also are people who have learned then to live within this place of their economy. That's not a small thing. Money is a real factor, is it not? We all know that. And you know, another thing is important is to see that they see their work in these studies. They see that the work they do is more than just providing for family. They see it as providing for society. I think there's some truth to that. And the third thing that comes out over and over again is that out there loving their work, they want to be successful, and yet at the same time, they want to be balanced. So they put their energy not only in work, but in family, community, a hobby, whatever it is, their spirituality, their church, their faith. There's this platform that bridges so much, but it's a balanced kind of life. I, for one, don't follow me, way more workaholic than I needed to be, mostly in here. And then my energy followed that and my time followed that. These folks may work so much, but they also have a way to rebalance the way they do work so much, because we all work a lot. I don't know about you, but do you know anybody who really loves everything about their job? Really? I don't know anybody like that. Because most of us like some things but don't like others. It's part of us. But you know, what a blessing it would be to have a job and work that you really like most of, that you really want to be about. And if you're not in that place and haven't been, well, again, not a put down, it's an observation. It's hard, isn't it? Someone even challenged me. I've preached this twice, so I'm kind of sick of listening to myself today. Preached at 8 and then out at Lakeshore. But someone came up and said, you know what the hardest place in my life was? I said, what? He said, when I was injured and couldn't work anymore. You didn't talk about that. But he made my point, didn't it? That what he was doing was so important that he could no longer figure out who he was. He said, I struggled mightily. And I said, thank you, because I'm going to mention that. That needs to be said. That's how central we see this aspect of work. And look where we are today, post-COVID. We're in a something. I look around at all the medical people here. Have enough staff at the hospital? Nope. Been on a wait list at a restaurant? Yep. Every industry is looking at the number of people working, how they're working. Everybody knows everybody's busier. That's what we've come out of, for the most part. You may not be touched. But again, I want to remind you that middle America is touched deeply by this. Everybody's working more. I hear it all the time from the younger people here. I work all the time, all the time. Oh, and wait a minute. There's one other reason. Dramatic pause, so you pay attention. It's this thing. I threw it at early church. I won't throw it. I might break it if I throw it this time. I tossed it on the floor. It's this machine. I don't know a young person, much younger than I, that says, I am tied to my job 24/7 because of this. Texts come through, messages from the boss, messages from clients. I work all the time. We work more. I'm going to say it again. We work more. How much more do we work? Probably more than any industrialized country in the world, other than Japan. We are about work, let's be honest. Not a bad thing, but when it's 24/7, it's a cautionary tale, isn't it? That's what technology has given us, but it's also where we are. And there was a time it wasn't this way, but it is where we are today, isn't it? So I hope you'll join me. Take this conversation inside yourself. Do something with it. We don't idly just wander into Labor Day. We've begun to practice that in America. Maybe we'd unpractice that. When we have these holidays and these times to stop, they're for a purpose. They really have a purpose in us. It's a civic purpose. What in the world is going on in work? Are you paying attention? I'm paying attention. I find it in myself. I'm looking around. It's not a bad thing. It's an important thing. I think everybody needs to work when and if they can, because it is the way we understand purpose. By the way, I'm not saying some, progressive thought from a liberal Episcopalian. That's ridiculous. What's the oldest story in the Bible? You want one? I'll give you one. How about the Garden of Eden? What was the big dust up? I get kicked out of the garden, and guess what I have to do? I have to toil and work. The language is a little misleading, but they called it a curse. Well, that's one way to see it. But I think the other way is to say the relevance of work is it's always been relevant. For all of humanity, it is part of us. It is part of who we are. And it's complex, isn't it? We are an industrialized country. Grow up. Let's wake up together. We are a capitalist economy, period. We have a free market society, period. It is not going to change. It is up to us to make it work. It's the truth. It won't manage itself. It has no soul. Humans have souls. It's time for us to think about where all of this is headed and to help each other. Rebalance things that need rebalancing, and there's a lot. And some of that's political, and I don't want to talk about that because I'm not talking about conclusions. I'm thinking more about our work. You realize it's spiritual work. To care about how other people are, how the society is we live in. It is our work, isn't it? It really is. It's part of who we're about. And work, good work, successful work makes us a robust economy. Who doesn't need one? The world wants us to be robust and thriving and continually rebound. We tend to rebound even from hard times. But realize, don't we, that work is at the center. It's the center of the success of this country. And I'm thankful for it. My family's worked hard, I bet yours has. My dad worked hard, my grandparents. I appreciate what they instilled in me. But we're in our time now. And you know what? The future will have its challenges, maybe harder than we've realized. So think about work. Do some spiritual thought about it, because it does have a deep spirituality in it. I don't know about you, but at Labor Day, I do a few simple things, and they just come naturally to me. I try to practice them all the time, but this weekend, I remind myself of simple things. Every job is important. There is no job beneath any other job, period, that has crept into our society. It needs to leave. It's dangerous. It's pernicious. I have friends, I have colleagues that live in other places like Africa. They do not think this way, by the way. They think every job is important, literally. They practice it that way. They don't disparage anybody working. Time for us to do a little bit of that. And maybe this holiday we take an extra measure to thank the people who do so much and do it so well, and you don't even know who they are. And you know who those people are, don't you? They take care of you. They serve you. They fix your stuff. They collect your trash. They do all kind of things. Tomorrow is Labor Day, is it not? I don't know about you, but I have recycling tomorrow. And I'm serious. I will walk out and say thank you to the driver. I did it last year, and I think he thought I'd lost my mind. Said, what is this guy doing? I said, thank you for doing this. He said, oh, okay, you're welcome. It was more for me than for him. I need him or whoever to do that work. It's worth doing, and particularly if it's difficult or dangerous. And maybe we really can thank those people that we often don't thank with pay who do so much for us. What about our teachers? What about the police officer who's invaluable right now protecting you and me? One out on that side of the building and on that side of the building. Or the military, or just do the list. I'm not cutting it off there. I'm not being romantic about this. There are all kinds of jobs that aren't enumerated according to the way that they may be important to society. but they're important to you and me. And they're important, and I have to say, the people around here, our police officers, they take seriously how important what they do is, and they respond accordingly. They're quite admirable. I'll tell you, these young police officers. Say something to them, get to know them a bit. I've sought all this to leave the spiritual thing at the last, but everything I've said is spiritual, I promise you. If we divorce ourselves from the world, your spirituality is worthless. That is what James tried to say in the first century. Faith and work go together. You cannot pull them apart. When we start doing that kind of work, what else will you pull apart? What else will we extract and say, oh, that's not spiritual work, that's something else? Everything that has to do with our lives is spiritual. James is trying to describe it in the way that he understood it. But you know, they go hand in hand, faith and work. And you know, maybe that's true in every job we do as well. Maybe we can take our faith to our work in the way that's appropriate. I don't mean being bossy or tell people I'm a Christian. I'm talking about the way I actually perform, the way I actually treat people at my work, the way I treat my colleagues, the way I advocate for people. That's a deeper way to understand all this. But you know, work serves not just ourselves, does it? It really does serve the people around us, our families, and it serves our community. And right now, very clearly, it serves the world. Work is really essential. It is important. Khalil Gibran, if you want a line to take home, said this many years ago. Work is love made visible. I'm going to say it again. Work of all kinds, secular, spiritual, work is love made visible. I mind you, we show up every Sunday, most Sundays, during the week, together as a community to remind ourselves it is our job to show the world about God's love. Have a great Labor Day. Amen.